believe it or not, and this is Scout's honour, I'm struggling to figure out what to put in the intro because you want to have a balance, right? You want to be like, I want to be professional. I know that as a YouTube channel, as a footy analyst, I know people don't like certain things that I say sometimes in a particular way. And I was having a big old think as I'm sitting here to record. And then I realized that I just needed to pull my finger out and say what I feel. And that is that this mighty football club, of which I'm incredibly grateful to be a supporter of, are going to a fucking preliminary final. Let's go! The start, obviously, less than 2.5 minutes, you've put 3 on the board. And it's strange tonight that as a fan, sitting on the couch, and I obviously have no idea what goes into the decision-making of football clubs on game day, any of those things. But as a fan watching, if someone had said to me, look, what are you worried about tonight? The first thing that I would have said was, well, if Newcombe gets tagged and he's going to be against O'Shea Mullen next week, we might be in a little bit of trouble in the midfield. And then he lined up, Newcombe did, against Sam Berry. And I went, yep, please, let's do this. And then he just went out and had, 5 centre clearances in the first quarter? It just took the piss. Did Jai. Holy shit. The second thing was actually before the game even started. And Adelaide fans, if you're for some reason watching this because you just enjoy the pain, you're a masochist at this point, why did you drop Hugh Bond, who went to Nick Watson the last time we played, which was at Adelaide Oval, and made the Wizard wear the invisibility cloak? He was nowhere. And geez, if he had a kick straight, the Wizard tonight would have been in proper contention for some MVP votes. He's just missed out. Spoiler alert. So those two things themselves was already strange. And then tonight it was a contribution from everyone. The moments was incredible. I have no real idea where I'm going to go with this. I feel like every single player who played tonight deserves a sentence or two on them, and I'm going to try and do that as quickly as possible. But before we get to that, in terms of the credit that Sam Mitchell deserves just for this club, because you came into tonight and it was going to be an interesting discussion, and I don't want to do that if we lost for too long, because obviously we didn't. But you would have Hawthorn fans going, well, we finished lower on the ladder and we didn't go further than we did last year, therefore the season's a fail. And I would get where you're coming from there. And then the other side of the coin, which is definitely where I would be landing on, would be that depending on how many points that we kicked tonight, we will have scored more than we did last year. We'll have conceded less points, won more games, I should say, and we would have lost to the team on top of the ladder in a semi-final, away from home. What does the trajectory look like next year? Fortunately, the group just went, well, I ain't going to have that discussion with anyone tonight because we're just going to go out there and just belt the shit out of them from pretty much go to woe. In fact, did Adelaide lead at any stage tonight? No, they didn't. Not for a second. So between two finals, we have now led, and if my math is correct, remembering from the last game, we've led for 98.6% of the two finals games combined. So you're looking at it as a case of we won all 4 quarters tonight as well. We've won 7 out of 8 quarters in the finals. We have, outside of a 12-minute burst by the Giants, been so far the better side in both games. Now, granted, Geelong are going to do some things and have some advantages where the other two teams were disadvantaged. I just don't think Geelong are a side that can panic all that much, whereas the Giants, did because they were at home. Adelaide had so much to lose tonight, and the quicker that we were able to get scoreboard pressure, the easier they'd fold, and they absolutely did, outside of a few. Worrell was elite. Rory Laird was pretty good. Do we need to have a conversation about Jordan Dawson moving forward? But this is a Hawthorn conversation. But overall, I think Sam Mitchell played the psychological game tonight unbelievably well. And like I said, the amount that the lads contributed was enormous. So let's actually go to everyone, and I am going to try and keep this as short as I can because there are still some other things that I do want to talk about outside of the performances, but I just figured, how are you able to go through a review of this game and not just deliver a little sentence on each? Because how do you pick? How do you go, I want to talk about this player and forget about this guy? I don't want to do that at all. So disposal order, we'll work our way up. I feel like Mitch Lewis is going to cop a little bit from some Hawthorn fans, and as much as I would have loved him to kick that set shot, his aerial work was pretty outstanding. His defensive work was really good as well. I understand why he was subbed out. If Kalsher is fit next week, what do we do? I feel like the bigger body of Mitch might get the job done, but I don't know. CJ came on in the last quarter, didn't do a whole lot, to be perfectly honest. Didn't really need to. Tommy Barris tonight, it's really interesting because Thilthorpe kicked 3, And Tommy Barras was up his ginger on both of those marks out on the lead. Like, in terms of playing back shoulder as a defender, which Tommy does, Thriller just held on to them and took both of his chances. So, credit where credit is due. And then the third one, Carl Amon did a Heath Grundy in the 2014 grand final and just spoiled the ball where he absolutely should have just taken the mark. Thriller on his left, credit where credit is due. Tommy wasn't beaten tonight. He wasn't a net negative in the slightest, I don't think. Says Guinea was injured on the AFL lap. Didn't quite see what Guinea did, but 8 disposals, didn't do a whole lot. Okay, granted, you can get a mulligan for next week. Probably the best we've looked defensively without Jarman Impey having a big impact, and I said the same thing at three-quarter time, and then took 2 enormous marks in that last quarter. The first one, obviously, was after the Crows got that first centre clearance, and then the second one was on Dan Curtin, where you're able to nudge a bloke who's 200 centimetres tall close enough to it, minus GST, under the footy and took that grab in the centre square as well. So definitely wasn't a 4-quarter dominating performance like we've seen from Jars in the past, but geez, when his moments arrived, he arrived as well. What a superstar he is. Marbior competed nicely. I hope it's not late onset concussion from Mabs. And if you are going to shadow Jared Ruffhead in any game, which I highly recommend you do because Ruff's a legend, maybe not the 2010 lean back and miss everything to the left vibe, which Mabs did a couple of times, which is a shame. The Wizard kicked 2 goals for. I've spoken a hell of a lot about the Wizard already, but if he kicks straighter, he probably gets MVP votes. He was a nightmare. Thank you, Adelaide, for not playing Hugh Bond. Sam Butler was our highest fantasy scoring player tonight. 2 goals, 104 fantasy points, 15 disposals, 9 tackles. The best game he's played as a Hawk by a mile. Back off, West Coast. We are keeping him. The Alfred, the man, Smithy's man, identified him early, very early, and we love that for him. Lloyd did his job, 39 hitouts, 15 disposals. His low marking, like below his knees tonight, was really strong, but I don't really think, and look, the stats may say otherwise, but I didn't think he versus O'Brien was a massive swing either way. Now, in terms of getting the clearance, there weren't too many non-sort of bouncing clearances, so what I mean by that is it wasn't going direct to hands, which it rarely does, by the way. They are a bonus, I understand that, but Meekie did his job, I should say. Joshy Weddle deserved a hell of a lot more reward for effort. 1 goal, 3 from 15 disposals, but he was a pain, and he could be your 2026 All-Australian wingman next year if we keep him there and we end up getting Zachy Merritt. Oh, I hope he was watching tonight. My goodness me. Massimo didn't do a whole lot, to be honest, with his 16 disposals. Jack Gunston just kicked 70 for the year, which doesn't sound real, and I've watched him 21 times this year. Frickety frack are we doing here? All right, this is extraordinary what he's able to do. He's just kicked 5. Shout out to the Peanut on Twitter that thinks he can only kick him against bottom sides, right? Who I think's a Geelong supporter. So can't wait to see what Jack does next week. But I love the man. And I'm sorry, No, that's 7 marks. I was like, he didn't lay 7 tackles. Nope, 7 marks for Gunners, which we love. Again, I don't think we've had a defensive performance as good without Carl Amon having a big game. Like 17 disposals is not, relatively quiet, but versus the impact that we're used to him having, it was a fraction down. Josh Battle tonight I thought was really good. 17 touches from him. Dylan Moore was the best final he's played. He was borderline mistakeless, which was awesome. His second quarter especially, 6 disposals, all 6 of them were kicks at 100% efficiency, and he kicked a snag, was very nice. Connor Nash, 17 disposals, was a part of a midfield group that won the midfield battle tonight. I don't know whether I've put it on screen yet or not, but we won the clearances by 6 tonight, so he gets a tick for that. Jack Scrimshaw tonight was outstanding, 6 marks, 18 disposals. He doesn't mark everything, Jack, but when you feel like, geez, if they kick the next one, what does that do? It's always him. He did it last week in the 4th quarter. That's why he got an MVP vote, I should say. In terms of the better high half forward of the night, Watson didn't really play a high half-forward role until the second half, didn't really play it in the first half. That's why I'm going to give the flowers there to Connor McDonald. Kicked 1 goal, 18 disposals. You might be noticing a theme here that the Hawks had, if I can just do some quick math here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 blokes had 15 or more disposals. Jesus. Let's move on. James Sicily... Did I forget anyone? No. Sis, 21 disposals, 9 marks, did as he pleased. Had 9 disposals and 7 marks in the first half and just took the piss, really. Just did what he needed to do. We love that in a big way. If Blake Hardwick, if you're a Hawthorn supporter and Blake Hardwick is not one of your top 10 favourite Hawks maybe of all time, depending on how old you are, jeepers. But definitely of my generation, I think if you're 30 or younger, I think he's just got to belong in that group. I know that we have seen, in terms of my generation, 4 flags, guys, and we have seen some mighty fine defenses, absolutely. But Dimmer is up there with the best of them. Jimmy Warple tonight, just stop fending off Jimmy. Everything else you did tonight was genuinely superb. Fending off blokes, but everything else, massive tick. Newcomb, 28 disposals, kicked a snag. That first quarter of his, which I think he had 11 disposals in, he did. Didn't have a mark, didn't have a tackle, but 7 contested possessions, 91% efficiency, 2 score involvements, both of which were goal assists. He had 7 centre bounce attendances for 5 centre clearances. Piss all the way off, John. 4 of them inside 50s. It's extraordinary how good he was. 187 meters gained for the quarter. Got tagged a little bit out of it in the second quarter. Had 7 in the third quarter, 6 in the last. What a player he is. 4 out of 4 finals where he's an A-plus operator. And then our leading disposal getter on the night, Joshy Ward, 31 disposals. I know that people are going to go, well, Daz, you said he was bad a few times. Yeah, I've also said he's really good a few times as well. 7 intercept possessions, which is really crazy. 14 contested, if I haven't said that already. 71% disposal efficiency. 7 score involvements. 15 centre bounce attendances. 5 clearances, or 16 centre bounce attendances, I should say. 6 inside 50s. 4 tackles, and held up really well. The boys were just fantastic. And I think coming in as Adelaide, the top 3 scoring team in the competition last year, I should say, well, this year, the end of the home and away season, scored 55 against the Pies, and with 2.5 minutes to go in this game, were also on 55 points. That back wall of a defense have been extraordinary. Only conceded the 154 points now in the last 2 weeks. I think that's right off the top of my head. Extraordinary. Just how well that back, and you could almost say 9 is the way that it goes. And we roll from here. It feels like the entirety of the footy world hates us right now, whether it's meeting with Zach Merritt, whether it is how good we are, the people that hate, Guinea and Wiz and all those sorts of things. And the overwhelming emotion, the euphoria of how this played out, the fairy tale-ish notion of 8th beating first, regardless of, Daz, did you see how close the ladder was? This wasn't that big of a deal. It is, though. Like, I get that you don't like us, but at some point we have to go, credit where it's due. I'm not asking you to sing and dance. I'm not asking you to do any of that, but the automatic, but is probably my biggest pet peeve, considering what's going on in the world at the moment, even outside of sport. The but thing is just, it makes me want to put my head through a wall. But as we roll into the 2 last points that I want to make, as I said before, the euphoria of it is incredible. The other overwhelming feeling, emotion, state that I have is one of gratefulness. So my beautiful mum, who I love very much, is going to hate me saying this, by the way, but in November is going to turn 62, which is incredible, and she is a superstar. She's a Collingwood supporter. Has seen 3 flags, and granted, could very well be 4 at the end of this year. And I'm 27 and I've seen 4 as well. It's remarkable, and I think of Essendon fans and what they've had to go through for the last 2 decades, where I feel very little sympathy for the club. I feel unbelievable sympathy for the fans. I really do. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I owe Shane Crawford, I think the biggest non-family related and probably partner related, to be honest, thank you on the planet, when my mum put me in a Collingwood jumper and sent me with my brother, who was in Hawthorn gear, and my dad, who's a Hawthorn supporter, to Waverley Park, and we saw Croft coming out of the gym area of Waverley at the back there. He said g'day first, which was amazing. I knew who Croft was even as a little kid. He asked me how long I'd been a Collingwood supporter for, what made me go for Collingwood, and then he asked me, do you want to know a secret? I said, absolutely. He leant in real close and he goes, you can't tell anyone, but I'm actually a Collingwood supporter as well, and he shook my hand. And in that moment, in that day, or on that day, I didn't fall in love with Hawthorn, if I'm being honest. But I fell in love with Croft because even as a little kid, and I would have been 5, even less than that maybe, but at that point going, this was an unbelievable experience. I remember nothing of the training session, and my family will tell you that I went home that night and I ran through the door and I've gone, Mum, Croft goes for Collingwood. I love Croft. 2 days later, it was by Collingwood High Croft. That morphed into Hawthorn, and here we are. And it's been an unbelievable ride since. Everything I said about Geelong in the Premiership pie, about how annoying it is, of how good they are, I can 100% people saying the same thing about us. And then we move towards the Cats, who haven't beaten us in a knockout final since 1963. And look, my concerns, I suppose, around the Cats game are going to be more so than any other game because they do have the best midfield that will come up against. Oisin on Jai is actually going to get tagged. Bedford didn't do it last week. But overwhelmingly, the feeling that I've got tonight is one of pure elation. The celebration should be weekend long, absolutely, and I cannot wait to be unreasonable at work during the week. And this is a happy team at Hawthorn, let me tell you. So that's pretty much all that I've got for you in this video. It was probably the least analytical one that I've ever done, but what a result. 34 points, 101, 67, prelim final, Cats next week. To the Hawthorn Football Club, to Sam Mitchell, to the 23 players that play tonight. From all fans, if you'll allow me to speak for you for a moment, thank you. And please fucking beat Geelong. All right, I'm out of here, guys. I will give you a way better in-depth and analytical look at Brisbane and Gold Coast tomorrow night as we can find out who will play the Pies next week. Hawthorn fans, enjoy this one. I know that I will. Me and my little toy Hawthorn footy here. That's not where the logo is. That is where it is there. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Like the video if you like it. Subscribe. Join the Daz Talks footy family. We are a happy team at Hawthorn. See you tomorrow.